Hollywood has a secret list, a list so exclusive, so carefully guarded that only one man has ever dared to compile it, and that man? Sam Elliott. The actor who turned silence into an art form just revealed something that has industry insiders buzzing. After 5 decades of working with the biggest names in cinema, he finally named the 6 actors who shaped his entire approach to the craft. But here's what nobody expected. 2 of them aren't even cowboys. Before we dive into this legendary list, if you're passionate about classic Hollywood stories and the untold truths behind your favorite stars, hit that subscribe button now, because what you're about to discover will change how you watch every Sam Elliott film from this moment forward. Picture this. It's 1969. A young Sam Elliott stands on a movie set, watching Robert Redford demonstrate his shooting skills in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Elliott has no lines. He's just a card player in the background. But something happens in that moment that would define the next 55 years of his career. He wasn't watching Redford. He was studying someone else entirely, someone who would become the first name on his list. Now at 80 years old, still commanding screens in 2025's upcoming Landman Season 2, Sam Elliott carries himself with the same principle he learned that day. Real power never announces itself. That mustache might be legendary, but the philosophy behind it runs deeper. When Sam Elliott names an actor, it's not flattery. It's recognition of something most people miss. These aren't just performances he admired. These are the 6 human beings who taught him that acting isn't about pretending. It's about revealing truths most people spend their whole lives trying to hide. The fascinating part? Elliott didn't choose these names for their fame or their box office numbers. In fact, one of them never won an Oscar. Another was told they'd never make it in Hollywood. And the third, well, they broke every rule about what a leading actor should be. Yet each one possessed something Elliott calls the invisible weight. You can't teach it, you can't fake it, you either have it or you spend your career wondering why certain actors make you lean forward in your seat without saying a word. Here's where Sam Elliott surprises everyone. Jeff Bridges. Not for the Big Lebowski, though that's where their chemistry became legendary. Not for Crazy Heart or True Grit. Elliott points to something else entirely. Bridges' ability to disappear while being completely present. Jeff doesn't act, Elliott revealed in a recent interview. He arrives. The 2 first worked together on The Big Lebowski in 1998, but Elliott had been watching Bridges since the 70s. What struck him wasn't Bridges' laid-back persona or his famous family legacy. It was his refusal to push. In an industry where actors fight for every moment, Bridges does the opposite. He pulls back. He creates space, and in that space, magic happens. Their scenes together in The Big Lebowski weren't scripted as much as they were lived. Half the dialogue happened in the pauses. Elliott describes working with Bridges as playing jazz. You don't follow the sheet music, you follow the feeling. And that feeling? It comes from 30 years of Bridges proving you don't need to dominate a scene to own it. But here's what most people don't know. Elliott almost turned down The Big Lebowski. He thought the script was too weird, too far from his wheelhouse. Then he heard Bridges was attached. That changed everything. Because if Bridges saw something in it, Elliott knew there was gold hidden in those pages. And he was right. Their dynamic became one of the most quoted relationships in cinema history. Not because of what they said, but because of what they didn't need to say. Elliott calls Bridges the most generous actor he's ever worked with. Not generous with compliments or attention, but generous with space. He lets other actors breathe, lets scenes develop naturally, lets moments find their own truth. In an industry obsessed with control, Bridges taught Elliott that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go. Sam Elliott doesn't just respect Sam Shepard, he mourns him. Not just as an actor who passed in 2017, but as the last of a breed that Hollywood will never see again. Shepard wasn't just an actor, he was a playwright who understood human failure better than any therapist. He wrote the words actors dream of saying, then showed up and said them better than anyone else could. They worked together on The High-Low Country in 1998, Elliott remembers the first day vividly. Shepard walked onto set like he'd been there his whole life. No grand entrance, no method actor preparation, just a man who understood the assignment on a molecular level. Elliott said working with Shepard felt like stepping into a room that already knew what story it was telling. What made Shepard different wasn't his talent, though that was undeniable. It was his understanding of negative space, the pauses between words, the moments after hope dies but before acceptance arrives. Shepard lived in those spaces. He made them comfortable, he made them honest, and he taught Elliott that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. But Shepard brought something else: intellectual weight. This was a man who won a Pulitzer Prize, who wrote plays that dissected the American dream with a scalpel. When he acted, he brought all of that understanding with him. Not as baggage, but as foundation. Every character he played had lived a full life before the camera started rolling. You could see it in his eyes, the accumulated weight of choices made and unmade. Elliott tells a story about watching Shepard eat lunch on set, just sitting there with a sandwich, not talking to anyone, not checking his phone because this was before all that, just existing. And even in that simple moment, Shepard was magnetic, not trying to be, just was. That's what Elliott learned from him. Presence isn't something you turn on, it's something you carry. When Shepard passed, Elliott didn't give interviews or write tributes. He just said one word: irreplaceable. Because how do you replace someone who taught you that acting isn't about being someone else? It's about being yourself so honestly that it becomes art. Daniel Day-Lewis represents everything Sam Elliott respects and everything Hollywood fears. An actor who vanishes so completely into roles that crew members forget his real name. Elliott first noticed him in My Left Foot in 1989, not because of the Oscar buzz, though that was deafening, but because Day-Lewis did something Elliott had never seen. He removed himself entirely from the equation. Elliott has spent his career playing men with weight, men with presence, men who fill rooms. Day-Lewis does the opposite. He empties himself out and lets someone else move in. It's not method acting, Elliott insists. It's something deeper. It's voluntary ego death in service of truth. The Last of the Mohicans sealed it for Elliott. Here's Day-Lewis, British, trained in Shakespeare, and he's more convincing as a frontier woodsman than actors who grew up hunting. Elliott watched that film 3 times in theaters, each time studying something different. The way Day-Lewis moved through forest scenes, the way he held weapons, the way he looked at other characters, not as an actor hitting marks, but as a man navigating survival. But it's There Will Be Blood that Elliott returns to most often. He calls watching Day-Lewis in that film like watching a controlled demolition. Every scene precisely calculated, every emotion carefully placed. But when it goes off, the destruction is total, complete, and somehow beautiful in its thoroughness. What Elliott admires most isn't the transformation, though that's remarkable. It's the commitment to truth over recognition. Day-Lewis doesn't do talk shows. He doesn't explain his process. He shows up, devastates audiences with honesty, then vanishes. No victory lap, no marketing campaign, just the work, standing alone, speaking for itself. Elliott once said that Day-Lewis proved something crucial. You don't need people to like your character. You don't even need them to understand your character. You just need them to believe your character exists. And belief, real belief, that comes from an actor willing to disappear completely, even if it means the audience forgets there's an actor there at all. When Sam Elliott names Katharine Hepburn, people do a double take, a cowboy actor choosing a Connecticut aristocrat, but that's exactly why she's on this list. Because Katharine Hepburn did something no one else could. She made strength look effortless while making everyone else's effort look weak. Elliott never worked with Hepburn, but he studied her like others study scripture. Not her famous films, though he's seen them all. He studied her interviews, her interactions, her refusal to play Hollywood's games. She wore pants when women wore dresses. She spoke her mind when women were told to smile. She chose roles that challenged rather than charmed. And she did it all without ever raising her voice. What fascinated Elliott was her ability to dominate scenes with stillness. Watch her in the Philadelphia Story. Spencer Tracy is charming, Cary Grant is magnetic, but Hepburn? She's inevitable. She doesn't compete for attention. She simply assumes it's hers. And somehow, everyone else agrees. Elliott tells a story about watching Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. There's a moment where Hepburn just looks at Sidney Poitier. No dialogue, no movement, just a look. But in that look is 50 years of privilege, prejudice, evolution, and eventual acceptance, all without a word. That's mastery. That's what Elliott calls surgical precision with emotional tools. But here's what really puts Hepburn on Elliott's list. She never apologized. Not for her voice, which critics called grating. Not for her opinions, which studios called difficult. Not for her choices, which Hollywood called uncommercial. She built a 60-year career on her own terms, won 4 Oscars, and never once pretended to be anything other than exactly who she was. Elliott sees in Hepburn what he tries to bring to every role: authenticity that doesn't need permission. She taught him that strength isn't about volume or violence. It's about knowing exactly who you are and making everyone else adjust to that reality. In a career full of compromises, Hepburn compromised nothing and still won everything. Clint Eastwood isn't just on Sam Elliott's list. He might be the list, because Eastwood did something impossible. He aged without weakening. In an industry that discards actors like expired milk, Eastwood just kept going, and somehow getting better. Elliott first saw Eastwood in the Sergio Leone westerns, but it wasn't until Unforgiven in 1992 that Elliott understood what Eastwood was really doing. He wasn't playing cowboys, he was deconstructing them. Every role Eastwood took was a conversation with every role he'd taken before. A 60-year dialogue with himself about violence, justice, and what it costs to be a man who does hard things. What Elliott admires isn't the longevity, though lasting from the 50s to the 2020s is remarkable. It's the evolution without abandonment. Eastwood never rejected his early work. He built on it. The man with no name became William Money became Walt Kowalski. Same man, different decades, deeper understanding. Elliott points to a specific scene in Gran Torino. Eastwood is on his porch, beer in hand, growling at the world that's passed him by. It could have been comedy. It could have been tragedy. Eastwood makes it both, and neither. It's just truth, raw, uncomfortable, undeniable truth about aging in a world that doesn't want you anymore. But here's what really gets Elliott. Eastwood directs himself. He writes his own material. He composes his own music. He controls every aspect of his image and still makes it look effortless. That's not just acting. That's authorship. Complete creative control earned through decades of proving you know what you're doing. Elliott and Eastwood have never worked together, which Elliott calls one of his great regrets. But they don't need to. They're part of the same tradition. Men who understood that Westerns aren't about horses and guns. They're about codes, about what you'll do and what you won't, about the price of principle in a world that rewards compromise. Eastwood taught Elliott that you don't retire from being yourself. You just get better at it. And if you do it long enough, with enough consistency, eventually everyone else has to admit you were right all along. Gary Cooper. The name Sam Elliott says with something approaching reverence, not because Cooper was the biggest star, though he was, not because he won Oscars, though he did, but because Gary Cooper invented something that can't be taught: invisible weight. Elliott was 9 years old when he first saw High Noon. Black and white, small television, sound cutting in and out, didn't matter. Elliott watched Cooper face down 4 killers with nothing but principle and a badge nobody wanted him to wear. And Cooper didn't play brave, he played terrified, but he stood anyway. That image burned itself into Elliott's brain and never left. What Cooper understood, what Elliott learned from watching him, was that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's fear that stands its ground anyway. Watch Cooper in High Noon. His hands shake, his voice cracks. He sweats through his shirt, but his feet don't move. That's not acting. That's truth so honest it hurts to watch. Elliott studied every Cooper film he could find: Sergeant York, The Westerner, Man of the West. And in each one, Cooper did something revolutionary. He didn't act like a hero. He acted like a man trying to be one. The difference is everything. Heroes don't doubt. Men do. And Cooper never forgot he was playing men. But here's what really sets Cooper apart in Elliott's mind. He made stillness active. Other actors use movement to show emotion. Cooper used stillness to show decision. The moment when movement stops, when choice crystallizes, when a man decides who he's going to be. Cooper lived in those moments, made them last, made them matter. Elliott tells a story about being on set for Tombstone. Big scene, lots of action, guns everywhere. And the director kept asking for more, bigger, louder, more intense. Elliott thought about Cooper, about High Noon, about the power of pulling back when everyone else pushes forward. So he did less, spoke quieter, moved slower. And suddenly, everyone was watching him. That's the Cooper effect. The man who taught Hollywood that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is absolutely nothing. Just stand there, be there. Let the moment find you instead of chasing it. It's a lesson Elliott has carried for 55 years. And it's why when people ask Elliott about acting technique, he just says, watch Gary Cooper, then do less. These 6 names aren't just actors Sam Elliott admires. They're a philosophy, a masterclass in how to survive Hollywood without losing yourself. Each one taught Elliott something essential. Bridges taught generosity. Shepard taught poetry. Day-Lewis taught commitment. Hepburn taught authenticity. Eastwood taught endurance. And Cooper? Cooper taught the most important lesson of all, that the space between words is where truth lives. What makes this list remarkable isn't who's on it, it's who's not. No method actors preaching process. No young stars chasing trends. No flash, no noise, no desperate grab for relevance. Just 6 artists who understood that acting isn't about being seen. It's about being believed. Elliott's list is a challenge to modern Hollywood. In an age of social media and viral moments, these 6 prove that lasting impact doesn't come from volume. It comes from weight, the kind you can't fake, can't buy, and can't teach. You either have it or you spend your career wondering why certain actors make you forget you're watching a movie. Sam Elliott never wanted to be famous. He wanted to be good, and these 6 showed him how. Not through advice or mentorship, but through example. They didn't tell him how to act, they showed him how to be. And in Hollywood, that's the rarest lesson of all. If this story about Sam Elliott's legendary list hit you as hard as it hit us, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Because the story we're telling next about Paul Newman's secret rivalry with Robert Redford, that one's going to change everything you thought you knew about the Sundance Kid. Until then, remember what Sam Elliott taught us. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all.